Today I am going to show you some activities that focus on recognising and describing 2D shapes. These activities have been pitched for a Year 3 audience, however they can be tweaked and they can be simplified for a younger pupil audience, or they can be extended to challenge older pupils. I have chosen to show these two activities today because they both require minimal setup. Therefore, they will not take long to find the resources and they can be prepared very quickly. The first activity that I will be showing is a 2-player game, ideally, and the second activity is a 1-player game. So without further ado, I am now going to switch the camera and show you the first activity. So, to recognise and describe 2D shapes, I have called this activity Secret Shapes Under a Shell. It doesn't have to be a shell. It can be any large object that can cover a 2D shape. Now, I want to show you this box, which has a mixture of 2D shapes. Some are made from foam, some have been printed out from the computer. And I'm going to use a variety today, just like you could, or you could use plastic 2D shapes if you happen to have some at home too. The idea being, player 1 picks a shape at random. For example, I have picked this pentagon here, and I have hidden it under my shell. Player 2 isn't aware of which shape's under the shell, and player 2 rolls a dice. Whichever number the dice lands on from the roll, which in this case is 5, player 1 needs to think of 5 clues to describe the shape that's hidden under the shell. So we know that it's a regular pentagon, but player 2 doesn't know that. So we need to think of 5 clues. So we could say it has 5 sides. For our next clue, we could say its sides are all straight. As we know it's a regular pentagon, we can also say its sides all have an equal length. We could also say something about the angles in the shape. So we know that a pentagon, if it's regular, has obtuse angles, which are greater than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees. So we could say its angles, interior, but we wouldn't need to specify this for Year 3. Its angles are all obtuse. For our 5th and final clue, we could say something about the type of lines that it uses. So we could say something about whether it has any perpendicular lines. As we know the angles are all obtuse, this means it has no perpendicular lines. At this point, player 2 would see these clues and would be trying to figure out which 2D shape is being described. Now, as you can see, the first clue might make this a bit too obvious, so you could make the clues more and more vague to extend the challenge for those older learners. Once the second player has had a go at guessing which shape is being described, they might say, for example, it's a pentagon, it's a regular pentagon. Then you would turn the shell over and you would reveal the hidden shape, and they would be correct. Now, to make this a bit competitive and to inject a healthy dose of competition, you could say that player 2 is awarded 5 points if they guess the shape instantly correctly. They could be awarded 3 points if they get it on the second turn, and they get 1 point if they name it 3rd time round. And then you could swap roles and you could play it, taking it in turns, and see who the overall winner is after maybe 3 turns each. Now I'm going to move on to my second activity. Just going to clean this board nice and quickly. So this second activity requires children to use their observational skills. and we are going to show a picture. This picture shows a street, a busy street, and it has many parts to it, and as you can see, all the parts have been made up using 2D shapes. The idea being that a child is given 15 seconds to really focus in on the whole picture. I would encourage them to count how many hexagons they can find, how many squares they can find, how many rectangles. You might even want to print this off in colour to help them visualise it even more. So they would study the picture, and then after a few seconds you would remove the picture from sight completely, and you would ask the child to recreate that image using 2D shapes. I'm going to have a go at this quickly, so I can remember that a rectangle I think was over here in this position. I think there was a house over here, so we can use a square. I think it was a square. Then I have various triangles, so a triangle for the roof perhaps. And then try and focus in on those smaller details. For example, the building on the right hand side had some windows. Now, I'm sure they weren't square windows, and you would encourage your child to have this discussion. Were they hexagonal windows? How do we know they were hexagonal? Well, they all had 6 straight sides, sorry. But how many were there? Do we remember how many there were? I've just put some blue tack on the back of these shapes to speed up some time. Now there was a road as well, directly in front of these buildings, and I remember it alternated in colour, and it was made up of rectangles, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. Just going to get some more blue tack. Your child could spend quite a few minutes trying to recreate this. If they use printable images, they might even want to colour them in. They might be a real visual learner, so they might want to imitate the colours that were used on the original picture. I'm sure there was a tree as well to this side, so we've got another triangle here. We don't need to go into details of what type of triangle has been used because that's a Year 4 objective. However, if you were using this kind of activity with a Year 4 child, you could talk about whether it's an isosceles, equilateral, scalene triangle as well to extend their vocabulary. After a few minutes of exploring, and when the child is happy to do so, you can pause the game. I think there was there a door here potentially, or was it a door? You can see myself, I'm having a debate over what size of the shapes we used as well, so there can be lots of healthy discussion that can go into this activity. The door wasn't black, I remember that. So, just going to place this here for now. I think the door was a rectangle shape, and I know this isn't complete, but I am going to pause there for now. Then you would turn over the original picture and you would compare the two. So just so you can see in the camera, you would encourage your child to have that discussion about, well, how close did I get, and which 2D shapes did I remember correctly, and which 2D shapes did I forget or omit to use. So here you can see the tree is partially formed, but I'm missing a trapezium there. You could talk about quadrilaterals if it's a Year 4 child. Looking over here, we can see that the windows have been remembered correctly, but the door is not quite the correct shape. We can see the road has been forming quite nicely there, but we've forgotten the chimney, which shape has been used to represent the chimney. So there are lots of discussion points that can be used when we use this as a visual stimulus. There we had our 2 activities using 2D shapes. I hope you found them useful. You can see that the opportunity for discussion is immense, and I hope you think that children would find these imaginative and engaging whilst also being educational at the same time. Just a quick word before I finish, how else these could be tweaked. You could, for the first activity, give the child or the player a list of all the shapes that have been used to narrow down the options. So you could help them by saying that there are only 5 possible shapes to choose from, and that would help them work out which shape might be hidden under your object. I hope you found it useful. Please drop a comment below if you intend to use any of these activities throughout the week. We love to hear your feedback. Thank you. Bye.